So thanks for joining us today on Leadership Log, which is a podcast on topics of interest for the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center community. And the topics of interest today is the match game. And so we're here with Margaret Merkel and her team. Ma'am, if you could give us a little introduction, a little of your career background, and let us know who we're speaking with today.
Okay, I'm Margaret Merkel. I'm a program manager with the Lifecycle Management Center, and I am in the simulators division. And my role right now is as the Chief of Innovation Programs for the simulators division. Innovation within simulators, we look at new technologies and how they can be applied to our aircrew training mission. Our team manages the SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research Program, contracts within the simulators division. And we also do outreach to industry and outreach to our MAGCOM training unit teams to coordinate with their innovation cells. And with me today on the podcast is a program manager, Dylan Greco, and program manager, Marilyn Evans. So can we have...
Yeah, go ahead. So Dylan, why don't you give us a little bit of your career background?
Yeah, so I just joined the innovation cell about 6 months ago. I'm brand new to the government. And, like Margaret said, just day-to-day management of those SBIR contracts, setting up demos and everything in between. It's kind of been, it's been a lot, but it's also been super fun and definitely brings something new to the table every day. So it's been great and definitely learning a lot. So I look forward to that. And this match game, I think, is going to be great. And definitely looking forward to going down to Orlando for it.
And Marilyn, what about you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Marilyn Evans. I'm program manager in Innovation Cell, work with Margaret and Dylan. I've been on base as a contractor for the last 11 years, moved over to simulation, the simulators group, about 2 years ago, and was on a program called SCARS. You don't need to know all the words for that, but simulation common architecture requirements. And SCARS is quite a big deal. But now about ITSEC time, Margaret stole me away to work on the innovation team, which is also in the OTI branch of WNS. And I have been here since November of 2019 and working with some really interesting companies. We interview companies that we've never met before that just want to talk to us because they know about all the great work Margaret's been doing with the Innovation Cell. And really, we just have meeting after meeting after meeting. And now that COVID restrictions have been lifted a bit, we've been starting to have those vendors that have won projects in the past or that are looking for projects. We've been having a lot of people come in to do demos. So, and like Dylan said, he's been working with the vendors to get these demos set up. And we try to get that enthusiasm that we have in the Innovation Cell spread to all of the other people on base. We've offered up the demos to, people to come in and try the Vario headsets and the Oculus headsets and whatever tech, AR, VR we've got. So it's been a fun time.
Okay. So Margaret, if you could so we've mentioned Innovation Cell a couple of times. Give us a better understanding what the Innovation Cell is, what your team does.
So the innovation cells across the Air Force were stood up over the last probably 3 years. And this was an outgrowth of Dr. Roper's look at pushing forward on change. And it aligns very closely with General Brown's efforts to accelerate change or lose, right? So we're looking at how we can take the best of what's going on out there in industry and apply it to current problems within the Air Force. The innovation cells in particular look for ways to build prototypes or small group tryouts within problem sets within the Air Force and see if we can change the way we do business to make things more efficient, more effective, and better investments for the Air Force in general. So Dr. Roper's focus created AFWorks and AFVentures, which are two programs that look at how we partner up with industry and leverage the investment dollars that we have in things like the Small Business Innovation Research Program to both solve problems within the Air Force and also invest in our American business community, in small businesses, and grow the industrial base of this country. So within the simulators division and within the innovation cells that are out in our customer organizations across the Air Force, we look at training and training in simulation problems. So the simulators division focuses mainly on aircrew training. So we manage 2,300 devices all over the world that train pilots and aircrews in how they fly and how they rehearse for missions with almost every airframe in the Air Force. And we work with all of our foreign partners that we sell aircraft to as well. So when you see a movie and they're in a simulator and practicing something that they don't want to actually do in a real aircraft, those are the kind of simulators we typically build. What the innovation team is looking for, and these innovation cells have been working with over the past few years, is seeing how we can leverage commercial things like gaming technology to supplement these simulator large-scale aircraft simulators. So things like the Oculus headset that Facebook puts out, that is a virtual reality gaming system. Things like the Vario headset, which is a very high-end training headset from a company out of Europe. And those are kind of two ends of the spectrum of these head-mounted virtual reality displays. Another piece of technology that we're working with is the Hololens, which is an augmented reality display. So you can put on this HoloLens that's like a pair of glasses. You can see the world through it, but it also has screens that project information or other things in your field of view that you interact with. So there are different types of computer displays that immerse the user in the gaming or training experience.
And there's been a lot of innovation, obviously, in the last 10, 20 years in gaming industry. It's an area where there's a lot of small companies that come up with great ideas. And you guys have developed a different way of trying to find some of those companies or build relationships with them. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so part of what we do is pitch days, which are another construct built out of the AFWorks challenge events, or the AFWorks Small Business Awards. And we've done those over the past 2 years. They result in a small business receiving a contract for a year to 15-month prototype where we build some piece of technology out, software or hardware, and implement that for a given using community within the Air Force to see how well those things work in an Air Force use case situation. Like Marilyn said, I think she said this before, we have 16 of these projects in flight right now. 6 of them were awarded at the ITSIC 2019 event, and 10 of them were awarded last year at the ITSIC 2020 pitch day event. And what we've looked at for this year is doing something a little different, where we're looking at the next phase down the road. So once you've had a successful prototype built, the next thing you do is, how do we get this out to the using community in a broader use case than just the one person we did the prototype with? And so this year we've come up with a new idea called the Innovation Match Game, and that combines both these prototypes from before, but has them look at other use cases across the Air Force to see if we can and reuse this technology in another space and leverage that investment that the Air Force has made.
I see. So, you know, a lot of times the Air Force has, they come up with a problem, they come up with a solution for that problem, and it's over in this area, but there could be a place where that overlaps and could be used somewhere else. So that's kind of what you're getting after in this.
Yes. So we're looking at where we've demonstrated a prototype for one user, and then that we can show off that demonstration use case and potentially match them up with other users to see if this can be applied in a different area.
Mm-hmm.
The way we're looking at doing this is playing off of another game show kind of reality TV show.
Mm-hmm.
The pitch day efforts played off of the TV show Shark Tank, right? Where different vendors pitch things to venture capitalists and get their projects funded. So since we're going to the next step, we wanted to play something that matched people up with match people up to a problem. And so one of our previous program manager trainees, Palace Acquire trainees, came up with the idea of using the House Hunters model. So House Hunters is a TV show where a couple describes the perfect house they want to see, and a real estate agent takes them through 3 different houses, and they talk about these 3 houses and what they like and dislike. And then at the end of the show, you figure out which one they picked and bought, right? Mm-hmm. So playing on that model, we're going to have a training unit come in and describe a problem that they have. And then we're going to show them 3 different prototypes. Okay. And when they see these 3 prototypes, these are all projects that have gone through some version of investment with the Air Force. So they've either been a successful small business SBIR contract that is completed or near completion of their project, or they've had some other sort of investment. So we're trying to not limit this to the small businesses that have been doing these prototypes, because there's all kinds of other innovation work going on out there, all kinds of other tryouts that are happening. And so we want to be able to take some of those ideas and expose them to a larger audience. And we're going to do this by using this House Hunters mechanism to let that end user describe their problem, and we'll show them 3 potential solutions and have them say which one they like. But in that process, the whole audience will get to see these 3 pitches, and maybe they'll like one of the ones that didn't get picked. Right. Or maybe they like the one that got picked and they'll invest in it too. It's just an opportunity for us to highlight the successful projects that we have going on. They're kind of under the covers all over the Air Force.
Yeah, you know, it's a great way to avoid reinventing the wheel, you know, in multiple areas, instead being able to leverage off something that you've done successfully somewhere else and could be, you know, kind of capitalized on in another area as well.
Okay. Maybe we can have Dylan tell us a little bit about how that game's going to run.
Great, Dylan.
Yeah, I think so. Right now we're kind of in the stage of finding participants, if you will. So we're kind of sending out, with your help, that PA release and hoping to get the attention of vendors. And our next step would probably be to get in contact with some training units, and really set those 2 up, because that's the whole goal of the game, right? To make connections that, you know, we might not have seen before, or, you know, just the potential of it's great. But anyways, I think once we have our participants and kind of have more of a script, if you will, you know, we're going to, I would say, go into a little bit of analysis there and see who's going to fit well with who, obviously why. And I think we're going to just, you know, do our best to make these connections, and really get, you know, training unit and vendor up and running, and hopefully something great will come of it.
Mhm. So now you've talked about aircrew training. Are you potentially looking at other organizations? Maybe they have maybe maintainer training or some other areas as well.
Yeah, Dylan, we do have some other projects that are in some other areas. Dylan, you want to talk about one of, I'm thinking about the 3D media project for the weapons loader.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's basically how they're loading the missiles onto, remind me what plane that is again.
It's for the B-52, and we're working
Yeah.
with Barksdale Air Force Base on this one.
Yeah, so it's kind of just like a 3D, I mean, obviously, 3D image there. And they're basically loading a JASM onto the B-52. And some of the details that they have going on there kind of, blow my mind every time they give a little demo. Because like I said, just the attention to detail that they put into it, it's crazy. And I think it really sets people up, end users, and training units who are using this thing. It sets them up really well, because those guys at 3D Media, they spend their time making this as real as they can. So yeah, that's just kind of the idea behind it. Setting up these connections.
So let me ask you a little bit about that. So like the maintainers would wear like goggles and they would see like a 3D image and then they work through the process like that. So it's like a virtual reality kind of system, or?
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right. And so that could have overlap into a lot of other areas as well, correct? I mean, especially, loading a missile is obviously a complex task, but it also, you have to have an airplane, you have to keep the airplane busy, you got to keep a missile loaded up. And so if you can do that in a virtual environment, you can train 30 people all at the same time, without needing 30 airplanes on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So these virtual reality systems, I mean, they don't necessarily replace the hands-on training that you'd have to have at the kind of completion of your training. But for initial training and initial familiarity with all of the pieces and parts and the movement of the sequence of movement to do a given task and the things to look for in a task, they're a great way to immerse somebody in an environment and have that be a safe place to explore and learn those things that don't tie up an aircraft and don't tie up a bunch of equipment or a bunch of other people necessarily. Because one of the great things about training in the virtual reality headset is that you can repeat things over and over again until you're familiar with how things operate. And you're not like tying up a whole classroom of people while you're doing that.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I think somebody mentioned phase 2 companies. What are some of the phase 2 companies that you guys are working with now that have been successful?
Well, go ahead, Dylan.
I was going to just talk about Contact CI. We know them as CCI. They're just a small company out of Cincinnati. And right now they are working on hand haptic gloves. So they use the Barrio headset and they came in for a demo about 2 weeks ago. And what they're kind of trying to do, with those haptic gloves is when you put on that headset, and you're moving around in the virtual environment, you can flip switches, you can press buttons. And I think the idea of that is like when you're in a cockpit, the virtual cockpit, and touching all those buttons, like you're getting sensation through your fingers. So it just from their point of view, I think it just making things even more realistic. And, having a headset on your face in a cockpit virtually, you would have thought that would have been enough, but no, it was crazy putting on the gloves, flipping the switches, doing all sorts of things. Was a really unique experience. And obviously being brand new to the government, never seen anything like that before. So I'm I'm sure I'm going to see crazier things. And for CCI's sake, I think they're just going to keep developing and make this even better. And I think it's going to be successful, for sure. So.
Okay.
Yeah, CCI is a small Ohio small business, right? They're out of Cincinnati. They've done research on these and work with these haptic glove interfaces. We're using that on a project with one of our surveillance aircraft so that the crew in the back of the plane can be flipping switches on virtual control boards, and in the virtual engagement, they can work with the other crew members on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of being able to do this in a virtual reality space is that eventually we can hook these across networks and have crews that aren't even physically located in the same place train with each other, which is an interesting concept that we're trying out on a couple of things. That's one of those things that's still not fully deployed in the virtual reality. This ability to train across the network, but within a virtual game space. But as COVID has shown us, there's all kinds of things that you learn to do remotely, and training is one of those things that we're going to have to do more of this way. And I think there's tremendous advantages to that, to be able to put people together on virtual spaces. So instead of being in Zoom on a conference call, we can put people together in a game space, in a cockpit, or in an aircraft, and have them train that way.
Yeah. That's amazing. What are some other examples of successful partnerships that you've had?
Well, Margaret, Moth and Flame was telling us that when they're one of our companies right now that is working with several aircrafts. One of them is the MQ-9. They work with a couple of them. They came in, they did demos, I think the week or 2 weeks before CCI came in. And one thing that they said that they do in their staff meetings is, if we were all meeting together, we would all be wearing the headset, the Vario, and we'd be like at a bar or a hangout together. And it would be just like Margaret's there, Daryl's there, Dylan's, Carolyn's there, anybody else on our team, and we're just interacting, but we're all in our own houses. So it's really exciting that they can do some of what Margaret was just talking about a minute ago. They're not on airplanes, but that is one of the things that when she was talking about 3D media, when they load the JASM, there need to be multiple people working at the same time. So we're definitely working towards multiplayers in the same environment right now.
Yeah. And well, you can definitely see the advantage. I mean, having one person do a single task, but in the Air Force, a lot of times the task requires 3 people to work jointly together, And so if you can train the 3 of them in the same virtual environment, then that's a real savings as well.
Right.
Definitely.
Okay.
Another company that we've worked a little bit with that has had a successful phase 2 prototype, they were out of our 2019 pitch day cohort, is Take Flight Interactive. And they built an artificial intelligence driven instructor for initial flight training programs, right? So they've piloted this work with the training mission at Altus, right? So this virtual instructor, you put on the headset and it coaches you through all sorts of maneuvers, and gives you visual waypoints to look at while you're learning to fly in this headset, and gives you feedback on how you did. And you can repeat any section of the lesson and get feedback from this virtual instructor.
Mm-hmm.
The folks at through the pilot training next exercises or endeavors and all are looking at a couple of technologies in this space, but we've gotten feedback from a couple of ROTC units that want to use this sort of virtual instructor to prepare students before they even join the Air Force, which we think is a kind of a different use case than we initially thought. when we
Sure.
saw this technology, but we think it's a great way to do some outreach to our community to see if we can find people to give them some experience of what training in the Air Force is like, even before they join.
Yeah. So I mean, that kind of gets to the point of your game, right? Is showing potential solutions to someone, but exposing that to a lot of different people, because somebody might see the link and say, you know, that could really work in my situation if we tailor it this way or something. So so the point of this game really is kind of like not just promoting these companies. Okay, so you've built a relationship with them, and now you want to promote that and maybe grow that into other areas as well. But also just finding new problems to solve. Is that correct? Or
right? And some of our goal here was to look at how we get to the next step, right? So over the years, the Air Force has been good at this small business investment, at starting these things up. But there's this hurdle of getting technology kind of out of the lab and into production, and you know, various places they call that the technology gap, or the valley of death, to go from a research project to something in production. It's a kind of a big leap. And so what we wanted to do was to highlight some of these things that have been very successful, so that we can so that the Air Force can use this investment that we've already made in some of these technologies, because we know some of these problems exist in multiple places, right? And if you don't know that some other part of the Air Force has already done work on this, then you go out and you start at square one to solve your problem. What we're trying to do is leapfrog over that valley of death and say, look, we've already got some things started. You could pick up from here and make progress a lot faster.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you know, in the past, we've done that so many times where, you know, you've got 3 programs running in 3 different locations, all kind of doing the same similar sort of thing, you know, where one effort could have solved all 3 problems.
Right.
So
another thing that we're hoping to get out of this is, because we're highlighting, and this is an event at ITSIC, which is an industry inter-service training and simulation conference, simulation education conference, in December. It's one of the largest conferences in the world for training and education technologies. And we're hoping, by highlighting these small companies that we've worked with, or these projects we've worked with within the Air Force, that the other services will have a chance to see the work that we're doing as well as industry, so that, you know, it could be that it's not necessarily another Air Force client or use case that picks this up. It may be an industry partner that sees this as some niche that they need filled, and they partner with the company that's already done this development. So it's kind of a way to leverage the investment that the American people have made in these small companies, and see if we can make it a broader use for the technologies that we're building here.
Yeah, which is in overall, it strengthens the industrial base, and it benefits us all. So
yeah.
So that pretty much brings us to the end of our time. But before we close, is there anything that we've left out, or anything that you'd like to reiterate?
Yeah, we should probably tell people how to get involved in Match Game if they want to.
Yes, absolutely.
So for vendors and or training units in the Air Force that want to apply and be part of the Match Game, they can send to us for an application. And I don't have the email address in front of me. Dylan, do you have that email address?
But I assume Daryl will put it in like the podcast byline.
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell me what it is if you've got it. But yeah, we will put it on in the byline as well.
AFLCMC.WNS.sims_innovate@us.af.mil. And the deadline to apply is September 10th.
September 10th. Okay.
Yeah. So if you email us, we'll email you the application form that just is tell us about your project and your company and or your training unit. And if there are training units that also want to point us towards a vendor, or vendors that want to point us towards a training unit, that's absolutely okay. Just send us an email and we'll get in touch and try and work that out.
So because you're looking for companies that have solutions, but also organizations that have potential problems that they're looking for better solutions on.
Sure, because we want to
They're
highlight.
the hunter.
Yeah.
We need the hunters.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, thank you all for joining us today on Leadership Log. It's been a very interesting conversation, and I'm glad that we've got innovative people like you in the innovation cell looking for new ways to solve vexing problems. So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Daryl.
Thank you.